thereligionssquared.com.
Please welcome Antony Sutch, who's a Benedictine monk and was the master at Downside.
Can I just say, Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, it's lovely to be here. I'm slightly in awe of Anne. I totally agree with much of what she said, but she said whited sepulchres. Well, I hate to say it, live off collections that come into church, so please continue to go to church because I need the money. It's as simple as that. And I do care how you vote because I've got odds with friends of mine on how you're going to vote, so it is very, very important. And you talk about, Alain, not, the ritual, the repetition of religion. Well, the most repetitive thing of all seems to be, so I'm told, the tax collector, and that, I assure you, is not religious. So let's get away from assuming that all these things you talk about are religious. They're also secular. And may I also say, Grayson, how deeply offended I am that you talk about religious people in dresses. They're happening all over the place. Well, some of you will have heard the story that I had when I took my habit to be cleaned by Sketchlys. And I had a half-hour discussion with them as to whether it should be cleaned as a military uniform or a ball gown, because there was no other definition. And I went for a ball gown, which is not a dress. So let's get some of our facts right. Can I also say that the whole world of pilgrimage, which you seem to enjoy because of the hell of it, Alain because I don't know what it does to him, can I just say that I once travelled first class, Cathay Pacific, to Hong Kong from London, and I would choose that any time in preference to pilgrimage, and it taught me a great deal. And a man on the news item came up, a chap, an evangelical, I won't go into naming and shaming, who had been caught, sadly, committing adultery. And he said that he was deeply sorry about this, and he wanted to build a cathedral of repentance. He needed $10 million. And I was sitting in first class, and a good old Australian secular type turned around and said, "And what have you been doing, Padre, to come first class?" So let's enjoy what is there. If you're not a believer, don't try and take things. Why don't you trust yourselves? Why don't you trust being secular, being an atheist? Why do you want to pinch things? I don't want to pinch things off you. I have no doubt, even though in some review of your book, and my God, Anna, you're all over the damn place. I had to pay £3 for a Financial Times to read about you. And I see you're in the Evening Standard. Is this one big PR for the secular world? But anyway, never mind. But God is relationship. I have no doubt about that. And the history of religion without God is not a good one. We don't need religion as much as we need God. And that's how I see this debate. Again, I got this from a review. Machiavelli thought that religion was useful. It's a way of terrorizing people. Gibbons said he despised religious people, but it was socially useful. Diderot said it was essential for social unity, etc., etc. How incredibly patronizing that you want to take on board the outward signs of what should be an inner real response. Because it seems to me that without God, religion is a controlling and can be a state-controlling craft. And I don't want that, and I don't think you do. So God is far more important than the religion. The religion follows from it. Ritual comes from, as it were, knowing God and therefore practicing. Let me tell you a story which I think sums up your position. Supposedly, some friends of mine, a friend of mine said his parents were going from Bath to the Seychelles on holiday. They were in their late 70s. Lovely people, and he was a real gentleman, and she was a real gentle lady. And going for 10 days, she naturally had 7 trunks of clothing. And he, being a gentleman, carried them. And he put them in the taxi. They got to Bath Station. They went up Bath Station. They got onto the train. They got off at Reading. They got onto a bus, and they went. And as they came towards where the check-in desk is some time ago, he was beginning to murmur. And this was very unusual because he was such a gentleman. And finally, he said to her, "Darling," he said, "why on earth didn't you bring the piano as well?" And she looked at him and she said, "Humphrey, why on earth should I bring the piano?" And she said, "Because the tickets and passport are still on it." So what you have done is you have left the ticket and the passports on the piano and gone for the journey getting to Heathrow, and it's not good enough. The other thing is, you're a lovely man, Alain, I'm sure of that, and you write the following things, so I'm told. You say religious beliefs are nonsense, but remain indispensable to civilized existence. They are not nonsense. This is an arrogance of the intellectual liberal classes, that people cannot argue intellectually. We can. And a woman called Karen Armstrong, who wrote the day after you wrote in The Guardian last week, is a powerful intellectual woman talking about the existence or the case for God. Let's not be so arrogant as we as religious believers in God have been accused of. Let's not be arrogant. Have you not learned from your religion how arrogance can destroy us? And you say this, religious teaches us to be polite, and I'm sure you are. Honor one another, faithful, sober, instructs in charms, promotes morality, engenders spirit of community, a consoling, subtle, and just charming rituals. Do you know what that reminds me of? I was young in the 60s, and there was a place called Lucy Clayton, where they tried to teach girls to get into a lotus elan without showing their knickers. And if I may say so, that's exactly what yours is. You're trying to charm. I'm not interested in charm. Well, I am. But I mean, I want truth as well. And it is a terrifying thing. If you have a faith in a God, it's not all hunky-dory. My God, literally, he won't let me do half the things I want to do because he says it's wrong to shout abuse at people like you. So I try not to, although I had to go at the bus driver today, but that's another matter. And Peter and Paul and a whole lot of other people are standing up for a God. All right, they're religious as well, but they're standing up for a God who can be terrifying. Romero, what's going on in Nigeria? People are being killed for their God, I believe, and they're prepared to do it. And let's get away from this idea that God is just logos. What about mythos? This whole idea, yes, of ritual. Not ritual for the sake of religion and conformity and doing it again and again, but to excite what Sarah Sands says in the Evening Standard today, the mystery. Why are atheists, and good atheists, I'm sorry, that sounds patronized, not meant to be, trying to forget mystery? It is about being human. Being human, responding to our position, is about God, we believe, calling us and us responding. And yes, that response is religion, possibly. But at the same time, there's no need for that response unless you have a faith in God. What are you doing? You're pick and mixing the things that suit. What happens if a set of people don't agree with the pick and mix that the other have? It reminds me so much of that marvelous man, Milligan, Spike Milligan, who wanted everything perfect. And what happens? He comes back from a holiday in Florida, and he's asked by the paparazzi, how did it go? He said, it was absolutely marvelous. No problem at all, he said. Sand for the children, sea for the mother, for the wife, and sharks for the mother-in-law. And that's the sort of thing I think you're trying to do. You haven't really allowed us as people who believe in God to be poetic, to allow that we don't know how to describe the indescribable, how to get hold of it somehow, admittedly through art, through poetry. I've been reading a lot of R.S. Thomas at the moment, and he has the most wonderful insights for me. They resonate. And he goes through various poets in an interview with Graham Turner, in which he talks about the way the poets try to describe what is to them, I suppose, God. But they don't want to use that word. And dear old Einstein, as you know, was a man who believed very much in the whole world of mystery, the mystical, not in your religious way. And he said, I am not religious in that sense unless religion is about the mystic. And it is about the mystic. It's about understanding how we came into being, what our destiny is. And there goes the church bell. That's an absolute typical religious thing. And lastly, but not least, can I just end up like this? I think what you have said is like an advertisement. It's terrifying. What happens is Trevor Bailey, on the last cricket tour of Canada, where they went by boat, spent the whole time downstairs below, drinking. When they came into the Hudson, they finally said to him, Trevor, you've got to come up and see what's happening, dawn. And he came up on deck, and he exclaimed in a loud voice, I can't. I simply can't. And they looked at him and said, what? Can't what? He said, do that. And they turned round, and there was a large advertisement, drink Canada dry. And he couldn't. And I fear what you have done is you're advertising, but you're not getting the substance. There is no religion without God. Thank you very much.
Antony, hold it, stay there. You have 3 minutes to grill Antony.
Antony, a lot of your talk seemed to sort of have this idea that we were trying to convert you somehow, or that our idea was aimed at you, but it's not. I mean, Alain's book and this, and the kind of the motion is aimed for people who don't believe in God.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're quite happy for you to carry on believing in God and having your.
But
life,
I'm
that's
saying,
fine. But what this idea is, because the secular society, without the godless, if you like, are adrift in a
well,
certain
why
way.
don't they get secular rituals? What is the point
Well, that's
of
what we're
calling
trying to do!
Yeah, but why does he call it religious?
I'm not calling it.
Well, the debate is about.
No, it's about being inspired by it.
No, it's not, if I can read it to you. The world needs religion. You should be saying it needs secular rituals. Fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what this is saying. Sorry, that's what we were told to debate, and Grayson was saying.
To separate those two things.
Yeah, but I'm not.
seem to get it.
And stop pointing, it's very rude.
We had separated religion. We had separated religion away from God, and Anne seemed to get it because she was quite happy with that separation from what she said.
Well, I'm not.
But you don't seem to be so happy with it.
No,
but,
I'm not at all.
And then you knock Alain as a sort of PR operator. If you look, he said it about Titian. Most religious art is PR. It is PR. And what is a sermon but a kind of a long bit of PR?
But Grayson, to the secular, all things are secular. I was actually spent an hour and a half in the National Gallery this afternoon looking at some of these, because I read Alain's article on art in The Guardian. And you could look at it, and he mentions somewhere, I think, the Madonna and Child, how clever religion is, or whatever, to make the Madonna, the sort of typical gracious, I can't remember the relationship between the two. To me, that's irrelevant. It could be anybody. But to me, if you bring God into it, you get a totally different dimension to that art. That art can be taken the way people see it. Religious art should be about God.
Yeah. Look, yeah. My question, Antony, is that I sense, not consciously in your approach, a real sort of arrogance. What you're saying is people should believe. If they don't believe, they're just on their own. Now, 70% of people in the United Kingdom, for reasons that Grayson was saying, etc., can't believe. I can't believe. It's just never struck me as something to believe. And you're saying, let's not make it like a finishing school, which really means, unpicking those words, let's not try to make life merely nice. Let's stop making it nice. In other words, let's not try and create a society where people aim to be good and wise and kind and generous. That's nonsense. There's a far greater heroic struggle to be had, and I invite you on that mission, dear brothers. Now, what I'd like to say to you is 70% of us are not engaged on that mission. 70% of us are quite happy, would be quite satisfied with a society in which people were good, in which there was room for tolerance. You dismiss that as a mere titbit. I think that's rather good. What do you make of my accusation?
I think I think it's total nonsense. Of course I want a happy society, don't be ridiculous, but to me, the whole idea of happiness is not by falsifying things, but allowing people to face the truth as they see it or as it is, and not dress it up. Surely you have enough confidence in people, whether they believe in God or not, to face that and to achieve happiness through where they are, not by some palliative. And, you know, Alex, whatever his name, said recently, let's put Prozac instead of God.
Dressing
and
up
I
makes
wonder
me very
if you're
happy.
doing the same sort of thing.
Anthony,
Yeah.